Why do we get stressed? I'll tell you why we get stressed. How many of you guys have heard somebody say, "Oh, this situation at work is just stressing me out"? Nobody? You never heard anybody say that?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I was asking a question. Everybody just sits there looking at me. How many of you have ever said that? The situation at work, or my kids are stressing me out, or this thing's just stressing me out? We've all said it, right?
Yeah, we've said it.
Yeah. Is that statement true in any way, shape, or form? The answer is no. Nobody is stressing you out. No situation is stressing you out. Stress does not exist outside of you. It exists within you.
Inside. That's right.
Stress does not exist in your kids. It does not exist in your work or in the situation that you're going through. It doesn't exist there. It exists in your head. It's you being conscious of a problem that is not present. It's not a present problem. Problems are never present. Problems are never present. If you're really here, you'll recognize that there's no problem. Problems are never present. So stress exists in your head. And scientists have just determined that all stress is what it does is you begin to think something towards a certain situation or a certain problem, and all of your attention gets focused on it, and it starts to compound, and it starts to get bigger and bigger in your mind. The vast majority of situations that people are stressed out about are tiny little, minute nothings. Little tiny things. The vast majority of what human beings fight about are not, it's so silly, things people fight about. It's so silly. But then your brain starts releasing certain chemicals. What did we say it was the other night? Cortisol or whatever it is?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Starts releasing these certain chemicals, and it starts to, your whole body actually starts to feel the tension. Feel this. Like you're creating. Stress is not outside here. It's not out here. Stress has nothing to do with how much money's in an account somewhere in a bank. It has nothing to do with whether or not I have gas in my car. It has nothing to do with whether or not somebody's writing me hate mail. It has nothing to do with what. It's right here. It's all inside your head. So how many times have you actually felt stress where you're like, you were impacted by it? I know so many people, and I've done counseling and coaching with so many people that are so dramatically impacted by stress that they're physically sick as a result of stress. Okay. I think all of us have lived long enough where, well, I should say we died long enough that we experienced a little bit of stress. You're still experiencing stress, you're still dying. Stop experiencing it. Start living. Okay, so I just want you to realize you were creating that whole experience for yourself. You were creating, as a creator, you're creating your experiences. You got to view the situation at work, or with your children or grandchildren, or the situation with your automobile breaking down, or your house, or your bills, or whatever it was. You got to view that situation and circumstance and create whatever narrative you wanted to create. You could have created it as this beautiful, amazing, flourishing garden, or you could create it as a nightmare. You got to create, you got to choose, and the vast majority of humanity chooses to create stress. This is hard. This is rough. Woe is me. I'm alone. No one cares. When am I going to get my break? Why everything just has to compile? When am I going to start making money? When is somebody going to start caring about me? When is somebody going to really love me enough? When? All right here, you're creating. So you're creating this entire narrative in your head. And then the worst thing is that narrative goes on to define you for years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Define your existence year after year after year after year. Within Christianity, called the seasons. They're like, I'm just in a rough season, sister. Brother, I'm just in a season of wilderness. Bullshit. Bullshit. The Spirit led Jesus into the wilderness. That was not thorns and thistles. You're creating the narrative. The Spirit led Jesus. You might as well said the Spirit led Jesus right into Eden. But we read the Spirit leads him into the wilderness because we always think wilderness is a lack of something around it. Wilderness is simply an unrealized garden. That's all wilderness is. Wilderness is simply an unrealized garden. It is the awareness of weeds instead of the awareness of the rose. It's the awareness of the thorn instead of the awareness of the beautiful, sweet aroma of flowers. It's the awareness of evil in a place that's full of light. It's the awareness of darkness in a place full of light. That's all it is. It is all about your awareness.
Yeah. Right. I just thought the wilderness is a place of no distractions. It's like where you're focused on what's truth.
I know. I mean, wilderness. I wouldn't necessarily say that. I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
I would say being, and much more being. Anyway, we'll go back down that road in a minute. My point is really simple. You're creating the narrative. You get to create it, and so you create the stress in your mind. So I want you to just take some responsibility with me right now for a second, and just say all the stress I've ever experienced. Say it out loud. All the stress I've ever experienced, I created.
I created. Me.
I created it.
I was good at it too.
It had nothing to do with what my coworkers did. It had nothing to do with what my kids were doing, whether they were listening or not listening. It had nothing to do with how much money was in the checking account or not in the checking account, how much gas I had in my car, or whether or not I had a roof over my head, or whether I had food in the cabinets. It had nothing to do with any of those things. I created it, period. I created that. We live in a society since day one of humanity, like since day one. When was day one? Day one was not the beginning. The beginning is Christ. Day one is the minute the men began to mark their days. Day one, when I say day one, I'm talking about the moment that Adam started living in this linear timeline. I'm talking about the moment he started living out of a place of psychological time and numbering his days. That's day one. Day one is not the beginning. The beginning is Christ. In the beginning, in Christ, God created. God was creating in Christ. He was not creating in time. You've been living in time because you haven't been aware of Christ. We're only aware of time because we haven't recognized Christ. The Christ life is this place of ecstasis where you're living outside of your mind, outside of this linear psychological time world imprisonment. Okay? I'm trying to take you somewhere. So just bear with me.
Wow.
So you've created all that stress. Any stress you've ever. So all of a sudden now you start taking responsibility for yourself. Start thinking to yourself, man, my God, like I can't point fingers anymore because what we do is we go, if the kids would just listen, if the kids would just do what I say, then I wouldn't feel this way. Not true. Not true. Not true at all. You get to choose how you feel.